Hey, Chandler here, and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of a touchy subject here, which is that of addiction. Now, if you're somebody who has struggled with addiction, or maybe you have addictive tendencies, hopefully this video helps you, because I know how challenging it can be to be addicted to substances, whether it's nicotine, harder drugs, even coffee, which is a highly addictive chemical substance that, might not seem like a big deal, but when you've been addicted to it for a long time, it can really change your brain chemistry and things like that that don't necessarily allow you to see the world with an open perspective and make the right choices in your life that will just be in more of a flow state for you. And that's what we're trying to get after. It's this flow state where we don't have to try so hard. We don't have to struggle and trip and fall so much. We can just be at ease, right? Just like surfing a wave, when we find that perfect barrel or that perfect wave that we're on. In my case, I'm talking about surfing because I love surfing. It's like when I'm just in that flow state, I can just relax and be at ease with my life. And so, just to get into a simple one, which is like caffeine addiction. So for me, I was addicted to caffeine, coffee particularly, which is a highly stimulating substance, for 10 years. So if you're addicted to a stimulant, the first thing you can do is just, become aware of the fact that you are addicted. I don't even like to use the term addicted, but become aware of the fact and accept where you're at. And so for me, when I was addicted to caffeine or coffee, I was always like waking up and just looking for this jolt to my nervous system, this boost, this high, that when I wake up, it's like I can't go about my day to day without really just wanting this heightened sense of reality. And that can be fine once in a while when you need a boost, but when it becomes something day to day and then you try to stop, it's nearly impossible to stop. And that's what it can feel like. You can get yourself into this cycle of hell, or this system of being addicted and depending, because that's what addiction is. It's dependence on a substance to get you into a state, a different state that you want to ultimately be in. So if you're addicted to a stimulant, become aware of what that feeling is like when you're, like, if it's nicotine, you see these people puffing vapes all day long. Even younger kids are puffing on these vapes. And I was puffing those, what was it called? It was a Juul. Thank you. So I was addicted to a Juul when it first came out for, years. I would just rip that Juul right in the morning, and there was even like a little crackling noise, and I'd sip it with my coffee. So I'm getting a double dopamine hit, which just reinforces that feeling of that blissed out, stressed, you're just easing stress. And that's what you're doing, is you're trying to escape that moment of an uncomfortable feeling that you're going through that substance that just eases your stress. But the interesting thing is you don't actually need that substance to feel that stress. And you can actually feel that bliss and be in that state of ultimately what that substance gives you without it. Now, how do we do this? It's really quite simple. Now, there are multiple ways you can go about doing this, right? You can cut something out cold turkey, and you can, for instance, in my case, it was that Juul or coffee, and you can just throw it in the trash and you don't buy it. Now, this is not necessarily recommended, especially if you're like on hard drugs, and I'm not, this is not a medical advice video or anything like that. So let me just be clear that I don't necessarily recommend just cutting out something or a substance cold turkey. But I've done that for myself when it comes to nicotine, coffee, anything, right? And it's worked for a little bit, but then it's like the first few days are dreadful. You have headaches, you have side effects of, basically going through the withdrawal symptoms that you've probably experienced if you've tried to quit something before. And it's extremely brutal. What I do recommend, and what's worked for me, for instance, to give you an example with coffee, is I've been addicted for it for 10 years. And I'm like, man, I know I don't need this stuff, but it's like I can't work. I can't do my job. And I lie to myself and I tell myself that, man, this is just, I can't live without this. And it's just, becoming aware of the fact that like I'm literally telling myself that I can't live without this thing. So I'm keep reinforcing and I'm hardwiring that I need coffee, first of all. And then ultimately, once I've become aware of that, and this is why I'm a huge advocate of meditation, breath work, anything that allows you to basically step outside of yourself, take a pause with your life and just breathe. Literally just tap in, and I like to cover my heart with my hands and tap into my heart. And why do I like to tap into the heart? The heart is 5,000 times greater in terms of the electromagnetic field that it produces than the brain. So once we can tap into this heart and tap into this frequency by just simply breathing in for 5 seconds and breathing out for 5 and continuing that natural rhythm, you'll start to notice those thoughts. And this is the power of meditation, is when you tap into that breath and slow down. And you can do this right when you wake up. Literally just sit, and when you start to feel that feeling of uncomfortable feelings or whatever that's making you want to go and hit that jewel, that nicotine, that coffee, whatever it is, smoking weed even, you can tap in and just simply sit and breathe in for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 and see what thoughts come about. And you might notice, like, without that substance, they're going to be like thoughts of like, you want that, you want this thing. Like, it's almost like a dance where there's going to be so many thoughts thinking about the thing, which is why cutting it out cold turkey can be extremely uncomfortable and challenging. The second option is to wean off of it. So by weaning off of the substance that you're on, and this is what I did to get myself off of a 10-year coffee addiction in a matter of a couple weeks. So what you can do is you can substitute. Step one is substitute that substance for something else. For instance, what I did was with coffee, I went and switched over to decaf for a couple weeks. And by doing so and switching over to decaf, I realized that one, you're not getting the amount of caffeine that normal coffee has. So I started drinking this coffee that was decaf in the morning, and I'm like, this doesn't give me that jolt. It doesn't give me that dopamine hit like the other coffee was. And I realized like the taste wasn't even that good. And so you realize that what you're ultimately, the reason why that you're addicted to coffee and why you keep going back for more coffee and you keep spending all your money at coffee shops and all that stuff is because the stimulating effect that is hitting that dopamine trigger, that cycle in your brain, is so powerful and so strong that it doesn't even matter about the taste, whatever. You could be drinking gasoline and still be getting that dopamine hit and wanting to come back for more. So by stepping out and drinking something in substitution, whether it's decaf or even tea, this is where I went from decaf and then I switched over to teas that have a little bit of caffeine, because the caffeine's not the problem. What the problem ultimately is the amount of caffeine that is in coffee, versus teas has a lot less caffeine, and it also has these other chemicals in there that, like L-theanine, if you're drinking matcha like I am, it can calm down the effects of the caffeine, and so you're not so jittery and anxious and nervous all the time. So this video is not to say that coffee is bad for you and that tea is better. It's ultimately to tap in with yourself through things like meditation and stuff, because when you tap in, you can figure out based off of the feelings. You don't need a nutrition label to know if something's good or bad for you. You can tap into your feelings and really start to wonder, like, how do I feel on this? For me, I noticed with coffee, I just kept I could not sit still. I was always like frantic if I was ever talking, if I ever had to do a video like this, or if I ever had to do, some kind of a sales call or anything business related. I was like, my heart was racing, and it doesn't feel good, right? It's like, and I also noticed that I was going to the bathroom a lot, and caffeine, especially with coffee, can be a diuretic, meaning that it dehydrates you because you end up urinating and peeing out all of the liquids in your body pretty much, and you actually deplete yourself of minerals in the process. And then people will say, okay, you can add minerals back in with water, okay, great. But that's not the point here. The point is to make it easier on yourself. Tap into what is your body ultimately telling you? What is your heart telling you? For me, my body and my heart was telling me that I knew that I needed to kick out nicotine. I knew that I needed to kick out coffee because I was just feeling like uncomfortable. And if I couldn't live without this thing, it's like, I don't want to have to keep buying this stuff all the time because, or because everyone else is doing it. And like, for instance, with nicotine, that was a horrible one for me. I would like literally leave the dinner table, go to the bathroom and rip my pen because I like felt uncomfortable just sitting at the table with my family or my friends. And that's addiction when you're like, you can't just you can't just sit still and be with yourself. And so we have a serious problem, obviously, in society where we can't just sit with ourselves. It's like we would rather do anything than be bored and have to sit with our own thoughts. So the deeper message of this video is to tap in with yourself and really, like, for instance, when I drink matcha and I drink teas now, I notice I'm just like way more chill. I can kind of contemplate, and I'm just more in a state of balance. And it's like I can still have a little bit of stimulation, but I don't need to throttle my nervous system. I don't need to feel this kick or this boost and then have the crash later in the day. So if you're addicted to coffee, try to switch to decaf, go to tea, give it a try, see what works for you. But ultimately, it's not about that. It's about tapping into yourself. And I also created a heart coherence meditation, which I'll put in the description below for those that would like to download it. It's a mixture of hypnosis, which is basically reprogramming your subconscious mind to attract abundance, amazing health, peace, prosperity, bliss, all those good things into your life. And you can grab that in the description below. It's very simple. You just simply follow it for 15 minutes in the morning when you're in that theta light sleep state where your brain is very suggestible to basically receive information. If you're really struggling with trying to get out of these patterns that you're in, I cannot recommend hypnosis, meditations, things like that to really reset your brain, reset your subconscious mind, which ultimately is dictating your entire life, because from the age of 0 to 7, you're like a sponge just absorbing information. So you might not have had the best upbringing. You might not have had a choice of what experiences you were going through. And so 95% of your life can ultimately be kind of on this unconscious program where you're just going through life like, like a Sims character, but you're not really sure how you ended up in a certain place. So I'll end the video here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got something out of this, and have a great rest of your day.